Welcome to Brainfluence. I'm Roger Dooley. Joining me today is Nir Bashan, a fellow McGraw-Hill author and an expert on creativity. Nir has won a Clio, been nominated for an Emmy, and has worked with Hollywood and music stars like Woody Harrelson and Rod Stewart. And he's found out something interesting. These creative superstars aren't all that different from the rest of us, but they have mastered a handful of repeatable methods. And Nir has taught lots of leaders and individuals around the globe how to harness this same power of creativity and apply that to business topics like increased profitability, higher sales, and better customer experience. And now he has put his great methods into a book, The Creator Mindset. He will be describing at least a few of the ideas in there for us today. Welcome to the show, Nir.
Hey, thanks for having me, Roger. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, Nir, okay, so explain this Emmy nomination. And that's pretty rare for the Brainfluence show. I have had Alan Alda on, so he was an Emmy winner, but how do you overlap with that creative space?
Yeah, definitely. So I spent many, many years working in Hollywood and in the music business. And I've just, at first when I started working with people in that industry, I was in awe of them. Like, wow, it's Woody Harrelson or, these famous singers and stuff. And what I've noticed is, I was very young at the time. I think it was just right out of high school or college. And I noticed at the time that what I thought was, amazing creative moment of lightning bolts coming out of the sky and, these amazing creative epiphanies were not that at all. They were people who had a notebook, who would come into a recording studio or a movie set, write out a couple of things and perform and change it and then write out and perform. And I discovered that they're very similar to us and that creativity is something that can be learned and executed. It's not, this great mystical, secrecy shrouded mountaintop where, you need to bang the 3 tones of Solomon in order to get in. This is like real actionable things that anybody can do to become more creative. One of my favorite stories, Roger, is I worked on a hip-hop album with a famous rapper, hardcore from the streets and all this stuff. And, he's on the microphone, we're in the recording studio, and he's doing his thing. And I remember, he finished it, and, how was that, everyone? We were like, whoa, that was amazing. Like, the flow and the rhyme and all that stuff. He was like, great, great, great. He's like, can we take 5, Yeah, of course we could take 5 minutes. And, he got on the phone and called his wife, like, yes. Yeah, I'll pick up diapers on the way home. We're wrapping this up at 4:30. Yeah, I'm trying to beat traffic on the way home. Yeah, I'll see you. No problem. Yes, bye. I love you too, honey. And he hangs up. And we're all like, thinking that this is some, great, amazing, talented person, which he was, but it wasn't from, this divine inspiration. It was work. He literally worked on becoming a really good musician. And, I started to cherry pick these things from different fields. I did furniture refinishing for a while. I owned a production company where we were nominated for an Emmy, where we won a Clio. And I sort of cherry picked from these different businesses a guide on how to be creative.
Yeah, I would guess that creativity has to be structured, or there has to be a method for at least some creative professionals. I'm thinking somebody like a singer-songwriter where, every year or whatever frequency, you've got to come up with a whole new album full of songs. You're writing country western songs. Well, okay, start with a pickup truck maybe or something, or a dog.
Right.
But
Prison.
Right. Yeah. To
Mama.
Sort of keep on
and
doing
drinking.
that. Like time after time coming up with something different that doesn't sound exactly like the last thing that you did or have the same idea as the last thing you did. It's got to be a real challenge.
Yeah, and it is, but there's a methodology to it. And I write about in the book how, creativity is really about the concept, the idea, and the execution, and how, and I've done workshops, just like you have to thousands of people before where, everybody get a pen out, and I'm on stage somewhere at some conference and, people get a pen out and a piece of paper and they write down what their execution is. They write down what their idea is. They write down their concept. and they start to make connections of creativity that is a manufacture of creativity. It's not about, waiting for inspiration to strike. It's about making it strike. And that's what my platform is all about. And that's what my book's about too.
Mhm. Well, jumping over to the business world, it's one early point in the book, I think, is that creativity isn't just about big ideas. The big new product. The iPhone, the Mac computer, or something. But instead, it has a lot of applicability just in very small areas. Whether it's trying to make customer experience a little bit better, or solving an internal problem, or whatever. But it's really you've got to have a process for that you can do every day, not something like, okay, we're going to do a 3-day retreat in the woods and think about this, but it's something that you can just replicate with very little effort, right?
That's right. That's absolutely right. Everybody, you wrote a McGraw-Hill book that's incredibly successful and really wonderful, right? I'm going to bet that you didn't take, 6 months out and get a cabin in the woods somewhere with a big roaring fireplace and snow falling down. And you sat there and sipped, scotch and had your favorite cigars and wrote. You probably got an hour here, an hour there. You were on a plane.
That's my next book, Nir. That's my plan. Cabin in the woods, roaring fire, plenty of scotch.
I'm in. Are you kidding? I think that it really is about, an hour here, an hour there, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. We're all really busy. We need to have a system where we can go to over and over again. I learned that from the famous musicians and actors, and I've learned it from, the business community. Different people in the business community are also incredibly creative. It's the same creativity that those musicians had. It's the same thing. It's just, how do we continually tap into that source, use it in our product or service, or use it in our career, and come up with different ideas to get ahead. And you're absolutely right. Sometimes they're little tweaks. You don't have to think of creativity as being a revolutionary new product or a service, or wow, that's really creative. Sometimes they're little tweaks. Marriott's really good at the little tweaks. I travel a lot, or used to at least, and they'll send me an email
Didn't
saying,
we all?
yeah, right. Remember? And they'll, they've tweaked this check-in process or that, and it makes it just so much easier. So it is really about leaving no stone unturned in your business, no matter what you do. It's not about sales. It's not about finance, not about operations. It's about looking at every single pipeline component of that business and seeing what can I do to become more creative, and thereby improving, customer service, improving the ease of use, the, profitability, the revenue, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. You make the point that there is an analytical mindset that sometimes works against a creative or creator mindset. And, I'm guessing that many of us, both I probably have an analytical mindset much of the time at least, and many of our listeners do, because, we talk a lot about the science of marketing and the science of business, and a very sort of left brain approach, like not so much driven by experience or intuition, but by data. But how do you resolve that conflict where you don't want people just going off in a direction that has no basis in reality, but at the same time not being overly analytical about things to the point where their creativity is stifled?
Definitely. So the best data in the world means nothing unless it's turned into information. And we are in a love affair of data right now. Why? It's because it's easily accessible. I can go on Amazon and see how many books I've sold. I can see who's buying it, what region, all this stuff. Websites, your website, your listeners' website, their businesses, their customers' website, their client. I mean, you can get so much it's out there. There is so much data everywhere you look. I saw a documentary on Netflix about, I think it was Tinder, and how, they collected something like, 90 pages for one particular woman of just raw data. And unless that data is turned into information, it doesn't mean anything. I'm sorry, it means nothing. And for me, it is very important to understand that how creativity plays into that part. Creativity is something that we are all born with. Okay, we're all creative human beings. It what kept us alive, 40, 50, 60,000 years ago. So, a woman, the first creative woman on earth, put a sharp object on a stick, and was creative about combining two objects that would never have any relevance to each other, but she was creative, she saved her life, and therein by we were all sort of born with that creativity. We have it in us today. And the ability that we have to be creative is our identity. It's who we are. And what data does is it has no identity. It is what it is. And when we take that data and make it into information, Roger, we inject our own biases, right? And your biases and my biases and your listeners are going to be completely different, because I believe that creativity is literally half of our mind. Yeah, there's a lot of interplay between the two portions of the brain, but it is literally who we are, and it'll allow us to interpret that data and make it into information that is incredibly relevant and niche, able to be applied to where we want to apply it. And I think that is insanely important today.
Mm-hmm. So how would you start by telling our viewers or listeners, and for you audio listeners, this is on video too. You can check it out at YouTube or just go to the show notes page at rogerdooley.com/podcast. So what would you advise somebody to do who's in business and feels like they aren't necessarily doing very well on the creativity side of things? They've got the usual assortment of problems. They could use more sales. They could use more loyal customers. They've got maybe some internal employee issues or something. How do you get somebody changing their mindset to become more creative?
So I think it's a system of, one, understanding that we were all born creative and understanding that creativity lies within you. And two, it's listening to your gut once in a while, because that for me is creativity trying to get out into the world. Now, I'm not saying listen to your gut all the time, and I'm not saying, to meditate and align your chakras and all that stuff. If you want to do that, that's fantastic. And if it works for you, drive the truck through it. I mean, keep going. But what I'm advocating for is some balance and uniting your way of thinking, your mentality, and your mindset to become more effective as a leader, more effective at work, more effective as a professional. We have far too long ignored the creative side in favor of analytics, spreadsheet logic, numbers, facts and figures. But those facts and figures and numbers mean nothing. Roger, how many people have you hired in your life? How many people?
Oh, I don't know, hundreds probably. Over
hundreds, right? And have you had somebody with a perfect resume, just a perfect resume? And you're like, oh my God, this is going to be the best hire I've ever had. They're, experienced, and they line up, and then this, and charity work, amazing. And you've hired that person, and they didn't work out. How many times has that happened to you?
I don't know that I've had too many perfect people, but I've found that, people that appear really good on paper, sometimes they are good in person and they pan out and work out great. Other times not. And it can also, one little thing that I found over the years, if I was running a smaller scale business, if somebody had too perfect of a resume, I would almost question, okay, well, why are you talking to me and not Microsoft or whoever the ideal employer would be? Because, there's something didn't quite add up. But no, anyway, finish your thought, Nir.
Yeah, so basically, I think that we are that is a small example, and I think it might resonate with your listeners, because we analytically things should be perfect, right? But in real life, you need a different thing. You need some different way of looking at it. And for me, that comes from creativity. It comes from a part of the mind that we have really ignored or just kind of shoved down in favor of the analytic. We love when things can be expressed in numbers. we love the quantification of things, but there is a different way to look at things. I'm advocating for people to come more to the middle. We've been too far on, the analytical side, and we both probably have that really creative friend that still lives in mom and dad's basement, and he's 58 years old, right? I'm not saying go all that way either. I'm saying, come to a happy medium. One thing your listeners can do today is just start to celebrate their little victories. They're all around us, and you and I don't know, I am very guilty of this. Maybe you are, but I just steamroll past them because I set a goal, and it's this many sales and this, by year 5 or 3, and I steamroll past all these other little victories that happen. And just having the realization that those little victories are occurring and that they might just tweak that main goal to a bit of a different direction has incredible creative potential. There was an ice cream salesman many years ago who sold a bunch of ice cream machines, and his method was analytical. I'm going to, volume. We're going to do volume, and I'm going to get a list, and I'm going to contact the people on the list, and we're going to sell a bunch of machines. And he did well for a while, but then, didn't. And he realized that there was a restaurant that was buying a bunch of these machines because they were breaking. They were making a lot of milkshake. So he went out to see what the restaurant was doing. There was a line around the block, stood in line, ate, the food, and had the best hamburger he's ever had in his entire life. And the guy's name was Ray Kroc, and the restaurant was McDonald's. Had he have stuck to his main goal, he would have been maybe an ice cream machine salesman. But he realized that there was little victories that were telling him to go a bit of a separate route, and he capitalized on those things. And that's what I want your listeners to do, to look at those little victories. They could do it today and see, hey, what's been really working for me in the last, few months, and what are those things telling me, and finding incredible creative wealth in those decisions.
Mm-hmm. I've personally found that sometimes celebrating those small wins is valuable, like taking a moment and just doing some tiny little special thing for yourself or for somebody else or whatever, but recognizing that, because to me that sets up sort of a reward anticipation circuit in your brain that helps you focus on those, because all too often it's like, wow, hey, that was good, now you go on to the next thing, instead of saying, okay, hey, that was a win. Let's somehow commemorate that. Maybe it's just, going to a different restaurant for lunch or something, or
whatever.
Yeah, whatever. But just somehow recognizing that, so that your brain feels that and says, okay, well, I like that. Let's do that again. Yeah. So, in the book, Nir, you talk about empathy. And to me, this is something that has come up in multiple conversations with really smart people. Tom Peters was on the show just, a couple months ago and talked about the importance of empathy. Martin Lindstrom, the great branding thinker and neuromarketing thinker, has a new book coming out. It won't be out until January, but empathy is one of the focal points in it. And it's all about putting yourself in the other person's place. And you talk about internal empathy and external empathy being with customers. And to me, this is so important in so many ways. How often have we had a bad customer experience that if you said, wow, if the VP in charge of customer experience ever went through this, there would be heads rolling and changes made right away. But it's, people can get so divorced from reality. The airline CEO who has never sat in the back row of basic economy says,
right,
well, our customer experience is really pretty good. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
So talk about empathy and how that affects creativity.
Yeah, I wish I was as smart as some of your other listeners. You named some very impressive people. For me, empathy is really about.
I'm going to name you on the next show, Nir.
There we go. Yeah, I'm going to listen for it. I think that so for me, when you look at it creatively, there's 3 very important attributes, right? It's humor, empathy, and courage. And I've gotten emails about this already. The book's only been out a month, and people are like, really, humor? Are you kidding me? And those people are obviously not very funny. But the point being is that those 3 things kind of work together for me. I've seen time and time again in in different industries even, that those three things hold together. Empathy is incredibly important these days. A lot of people are talking about it, Roger, and I feel like we're a little bit, all over the place about what empathy really is. At its core, for me, it divides into two components. It divides into internal empathy, which is what you do with yourself and your team. It's realizing who you are as a human being and what your values are that you want to apply to your product and service. And once you realize what those are, that's kind of the core of your creativity, trying to get out into the world. As soon as you realize what those are, you communicate it with your internal team, and you're able to get on the same page and move forward as a unit. It is incredible to me how many businesses out there that I've consulted with, that just don't do that. They're, a mid-sized sort of company with, a very involved owner, and there was never a conversation about why they're doing this and what their story is and what their identity is, so that the customers, business to business, business to consumer, whatever it is, that the customers can understand who they are. So that internal sort of empathy allows communication, it allows for better meetings, it allows a whole host of things that can improve by realizing and executing it properly. External empathy is all about realizing how your product or your service is affecting others. And it's not really about, going, yeah, okay, we think they feel this way and moving on. It's really about experiencing literally the sensation of sitting in, the last row by the bathrooms, row 32 of a flight, and seeing that that's a pretty crappy seat. And then, understanding that this vendor providing this product, they really can't keep up with what we are expecting them to provide us because of A, B, and C reasons. And that for me is what external empathy is. The two work together in a very sort of cohesive way, because they're required to build a construct of really being able to relate back and forth. And it really comes down to information and not data. It's not about, listen, I've worked with this client before and I love them, but there's a very famous website where you go and you're buying a product, and beneath it says, you might like, and it's got like options, and how many times are those options right? I mean, at least for me, like almost never. And there's been billions spent on getting that algorithm to print out or to show you what those things are that could be. And I've been in meetings with people who have developed these things, and they're like, well, I mean, look at the analytics, look at this. We did research shows. It's like human beings are inherently flawed, Roger. We're inherently just not a perfect system. And no matter how much you love analytics, if you don't inject analytics with some human bias of who we are and why we do stupid things often, then you can't really have a machine do these types of things. So for me, empathy is incredibly important, and understanding that empathy gives you a peek into real information, real human biases, is incredibly valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like in that example, you really need two kinds of data. You need the analytics data, because if you're presenting people with some information, like here's a product that you might like, and 0.01% of the people are clicking on it, that's probably the wrong product for that situation, and you need to fix your algorithm. But also you need to watch the human beings as they're doing stuff.
Yeah.
Where are they slowing down? Where, how are they confused? And some of those things you can get from digital tools, but in other cases, you probably just need to watch customers. I wrote a post in Forbes a month or two ago about the mom test for customer experience. Like, if you think your website's so easy to use, have your mom do something on it. Or
Yes.
if she happens to be really digitally savvy, find somebody else who is not, and see, see where they're slowing down. And there's a huge tendency to blame the customer. Well, they aren't clicking on this stuff because they're too dumb to click on it. Well, maybe not. It's
Right.
probably your fault. So one term that I hadn't heard before that I found in your book, Nir, was micro listening. What
Yes.
is that?
So I worked with a wonderful CMO of a Fortune 500 company who was spending millions of dollars testing things in the market, focus groups, research, all this stuff. And he found that he had a much cheaper and more effective method. And what he did was he listened to only a select group of people. Some were his friends, some were acquaintances, sometimes it was an intern who, was out of college. And he would take a very, very small group, and then he would micro listen to that sort of environment and see what it is that came out of that, that sort of deliberation. It wasn't about spending a lot of money and then getting a sheet of analytics that, would help you make a decision. It was more about using a little bit of creative, about using creativity to sort of extrapolate, hey, these 3 or 4 or 6 people felt this way. Maybe I have enough of a slice that will give me an indication of where I need to go next. That's really all it is. And using micro listening is a very effective tool because, like every tool in my book, it's free. It costs nothing. You just have to ask somebody to do it. It's not about buying a new piece of machine. It's not about, getting, hiring a department and staffing it. It's really about shifting your mindset and working on looking at something differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that reminds me of Martin Lindstrom. I just mentioned him, but he came out with a book a few years ago called Small Data, and it was all about going into environments and observing carefully, what are people doing, and coming up with some really interesting insights about how people actually use your product or your service that you simply are not going to get from traditional market research techniques. It's actually like, sort of embedding yourself in that environment.
Yeah, and it's cheap,
paying
and
very
it
close
works.
attention.
Yeah.
It's fascinating stuff. So something that we encounter occasionally as authors are inflated egos. Probably some of us have those. You go into a store and you see a pile of your books on the shelf there. That makes you feel pretty good. But inflated egos tend to be the enemy of creativity. Explain about that and what to do about it.
Yeah, so we talk in the book about how egos are, sort of a destroying factor of allowing creativity to happen. Why? It's because you sort of load the problem with the solution before you've had a chance to really explore what the problem is. That's why I'm a little nervous about accepting the title of expert. You know what I mean, Roger? Like, expert, if you're an expert at something, it means you've been doing it for a long time, and you've seen a bunch of stuff, which is really important. But I'm afraid sometimes that because you're an expert, and I'm afraid that I do it myself, that I approach a new company that I'm working with or a problem that I'm working with, and I say, I already know what your problem is. I already know what you're going through. I know because I've seen it elsewhere. And what ends up happening is I lose that ability to be creative and to really solve problems there on the spot because I'm preloading it with my ego. It's something that I have to monitor every day. And it's something that I wrote about in the book to almost help me understand that this is what I'm doing and this is what I need to be doing less of. So I think just an awareness of it. And I know you have a very rich listenership, and you got a lot of really great people involved with the podcast. I think that we can all use that hint once in a while to go, time out. Maybe we don't know what the solution is. Look at COVID. Who predicted that? I didn't. I thought that everything would, continue to grow and things would continue to be on that track, and that threw us all into a complete loop. And that is one of those things where ego is prescribes a problem before it allows it really the opportunity to solve it.
Right. And I think now that you mentioned COVID, that's a pretty interesting space for inflated egos, because I've seen a whole bunch of folks who probably didn't take a science class after 10th grade or so, who are now epidemiologists and statisticians.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. I think true experts tend not to talk too much and listen and observe, and then look at the data perhaps, and look at what other information they can collect to make a reasoned judgment. But anyway, it's been amusing, and it's really afflicted all sides of that argument. I think everybody, whether you're terrified or whether you think it's kind of a mild flu, or regardless, everybody's got an opinion. Everybody has statistics to back up their opinion.
Right. Isn't it
and
amazing?
Nobody's listening to the other people, or for that matter, many people aren't listening to the reasoned experts who are probably steering kind of a middle course in many cases. Yeah. So I want to be respectful of your time here, Nir. How can people find you and your ideas?
Yes, sir. So there's 3 Nir Bashans in the entire world. So I'm pretty easy to find. I'm not the one uploading Call of Duty clips and, doing video game walkthroughs. That's not me. It's NIRBASHAN. The book's on Amazon. It's called The Creator Mindset, 92 Tools to Unlock the Secret to Innovation, Growth, and Sustainability. I have a website, nirbashan.com. We have a community, Brian, Roger, which might be interesting to your listeners. It's about sort of, asking questions and getting answered. It's Wayne Baker's and Adam Grant's brainchild, and Daniel Pink is on there, and he has his own thing, and they offered me my thing, and it's a really wonderful. We have C-level all the way down to students, and people are asking, hey, this is what happened at work today. How do I get more creative about finding the next CFO of my company? It's that kind of stuff. So I'd love to see you and your listeners on there. And I'm on Insta, Facebook. I would love to hear from all your listeners.
Great. Well, we will link to all of those places on the show notes page at rogerdooley.com/podcast. And next week we'll have the game playing Nir Bashan on the show. No, actually, we won't do that. That's not our topic, but it is good to know that there is somebody out there who is an expert at Call of Duty if we ever need one.
Right.
So in any case, Nir, thanks so much for being on the show. It's been fun.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks for having me. I'd love to be back if, we can deep dive into something else.
Excellent.